Hey everyone, welcome back. So today I want to talk about Caribbean Legend Age of Pirates. And what makes this release interesting is that it's built on Age of Pirates 2. So even though it's being presented as a new release, it really comes from an older game. I think if you start this game expecting a full modern RPG, it can feel a bit strange at first, but if you go into this game knowing that this is a rebuilt version of an older title, with all those strengths and the rough edges that come with it, then this game kind of makes sense. So the main idea behind this review is to have a look how this game feels, how does it compare to other pirate games, and whether the DLC adds anything meaningful. So let's get started. So like I told you guys in the introduction, Caribbean Legend is tied back to Age of Pirates 2 City of Abandoned Ships, which came out years ago and built up a small but very loyal audience. And this new release is basically a modern commercial version of that older game. So when I started playing, what I was really stepping into was not a fresh pirate RPG built from scratch, but it was more like stepping into an old pirate sandbox that had been cleaned up and made easier to run. And in essence, I felt it didn't change the core nature of the original game that much. And while playing it, the first thing that stood out for me was that there is that feeling of freedom, and that's what I love about this kind of pirate games. So it's actually not the freedom you get in modern open world games where the map is full of icons and side activities, but there is that freedom in an older sense where the game gives you systems and gives you a world and then leaves a lot of the responsibility up to you. So there is a story path you can follow, you can play as Peter Blood, but you can also take a more open route and shape your own destiny. And very quickly I found out that the real appeal was not the scripted mission or with any of the dramatic scenes. No, it was the feeling of being dropped into this pirate world and having to decide what kind of person I wanted to be in it. So in reality that means you're spending a lot of time sailing from island to island, checking ports and looking at what I could buy, what I could sell, and whether a quiet trade run would make more sense than a risky fight. And other times I was looking at the ships on the horizon and asking myself, can I take that ship? And if I can, is it worth the trouble? And for me this is where the game actually starts to work. It's not in one big moment, but it's in these small chains of decisions. So, do I take this job? Do I trust this faction? Or do I risk a specific battle? Or do I spend money on the ship now or save it for later? And I felt myself being pulled in because of that kind of thinking. And then you get off the ship and suddenly the rhythm changes. So you're in towns and you're talking to people, you're picking up quests and you're walking through streets and taverns. And all that gave off that great pirate vibe you expect from this kind of game. And having both sides of this coin, it also means that this game is trying to be a full pirate role-playing game. It's not just a ship combat game. It wants to give you sea travel, it wants to give you combat, trade, factions, quests, companions and so on. And for me personally, I really admired that kind of ambition. So that brings me to the point to ask myself, why did I keep on playing this game as long as I did? Because it was really not the polish, it was not the presentation, and it wasn't the story either. I think what for me worked is that the game respected me enough to let me make my own mess and my own decisions. And that may sound strange, but I think that is kind of the heart of it. Caribbean Legend Age of Pirates gives you room to try things and to get things wrong, recover from that or change course, and build a rhythm that feels like your own. So again, there we have that sense of freedom. I did not feel like I was being walked from one carefully prepared set piece to the next. And it kind of felt like I was trying to survive and improve inside a world that did not care very much whether I was ready or not. And on one hand that can be frustrating, but on the other hand it can also be very satisfying. I feel that the ship management side, the money side and the general planning side of the game all starts to feel more rewarding once you stop asking for the game to explain everything. It really is built around patience and it's about a learning curve, and the more I accepted that, the more the better parts of it shone through. And another reason I loved coming back to this game is the atmosphere. It really deserves credit. This is not the kind of pirate game that tries to impress you every 5 seconds. It's way quieter than that. And a lot of the pleasure comes from being at sea and moving through this old world Caribbean setting and letting the journey itself carry the mood. So even when the visuals show their age, which is kind of remarkable for a new game, there is still enough there to make the world feel inviting. So it's old-fashioned, but sometimes in a good way. But yeah, this game does have its problems, and unfortunately they show up early. Well, I think the controls are better than a raw old release, but they still do not feel really smooth to me. And then there are some of the menus and systems that are easier to deal with than they used to be, but they still carry that older style of design where you are expected to work things out on your own. Well, that could be rewarding, but to me it just felt awkward. And then there is the way this game has its moments where it slows down in ways that were not as interesting as you'd expect or want. So travel can take time, and quests, they are not always as clear as they should be, and even the progress, it can feel a bit uneven. And now and then I also got that feeling that I was spending energy fighting the game a little bit rather than simply trying to enjoy it. But I guess if you're the kind of person who can see through the rough parts and still enjoy the depth underneath, then this doesn't matter that much. And now let's have a look how this game compares to the original it was based on. So I think, and for me, I kept asking myself for playing this game whether this version really changes enough to justify its existence on its own. So I think, yeah, it does, but only if you understand what kind of improvements there are. This is not the kind of remake where the whole game is rebuilt to feel modern. No, it's more like the old structure has been made easier to live with. So the game runs better on modern systems and the controls are more manageable. And yeah, the interface is easier to read, and the camera and general handling are less painful than they could have been, but they are far from perfect. So in some ways the impact of this newer version is real, but for me it did not erase the fact that it still feels like an old pirate RPG at heart. And if you were to judge it as a brand new pirate RPG, which is completely directly with modern design standards, it will feel rough. But if you look at it from a perspective as a careful revival of an older, deeper pirate sandbox that most studios don't even try to make anymore, it becomes much easier to appreciate. And now let's dive a bit deeper in how it compares to other pirate games out there. And in all honesty, when playing this game, it kind of made me think about how little direct competition there is out there. If you were to compare it with Sea of Thieves, the difference is obvious straight away, because the Sea of Thieves is about the chaos and fun of sharing the world with other people, but Caribbean Legend Age of Pirates is much more private than that. It's way slower too. And it's not about funny stories with friends, it's about building your own path and dealing with a lot of systems on your own. And of course there is Skull and Bones, and I feel the contrast here is different, because Skull and Bones leans more towards ship focus action, while Caribbean Legend is trying to do much more than that. It wants it all. It wants ship combat, and it also wants land exploration, quest, faction, trade, character progression, and so on. And for me, still one of the most favorite pirate games ever made was Sid Meier's Pirates. And I think for a lot of people this still is the cleanest and best pirate game out there. And of course that game remains much simpler to pick up and to enjoy. It has clarity and it has pace and it gets to the point quickly. And this game goes in another direction. It's way denser, it's way more demanding and often more awkward, unfortunately. But it also tries to offer the more layered life inside its world. So in all honesty, I think this game answers to a specific niche. It's not the best pirate game for everyone, but it's a pirate game for people who want more depth and more friction and who do not mind meeting the game halfway. I also want to talk a little bit about the DLC. Well, it's kind of easy to talk about this one because there's not much happening here. In all honesty, the supporter pack does not feel like a major piece of content. It's not a large expansion. It does not add a new storyline or any major systems or something else that changes the shape of the experience. It's more like a small extra package for people who already know they want to support the team. And in all honesty, if you were to ask me if this one adds enough value for money, I would say no for most people. At least not in the sense of meaningful new gameplay. So having talked about the DLC, I think it's also interesting to put the original Caribbean Legend next to Age of Pirates. Because to me it feels both the names and the games are quite similar, and it can be a bit confusing what each game actually is about and how they differ from each other. So even though Age of Pirates is the newer one, I don't really see it as a straight replacement for Caribbean Legend. They are related, but they serve a slightly different purpose. As I see it, Caribbean Legend feels more like the broader and more established modern entry, while Age of Pirates feels more like a return to an older pirate sandbox, which has been rebuilt and cleaned up, but still carrying a lot of that older design with it. So, does it make sense to get a new one? Well, I guess it does, but only if that specific idea appeals to you. If you like the thought of a more old school pirate role-playing game with a lot of rough edges but also a deeper sandbox feel, then Age of Pirates has a reason to exist. But if you're planning only to play one of them, then I would go for Caribbean Legend, as it is the more polished version. So who do I think this game is really for? I have a pretty clear idea, in my opinion, who this game is best suited for. I think this is for players who like older role-playing design, and it's also for people who do not mind slow starts, and it's for people who enjoy learning systems and you don't mind figuring out a lot of stuff on your own. So in essence, it's for people who want a pirate game that gives them more than just nice water and ship combat. But in honesty, you also need to be a person who can be patient with a game that does not always feel smooth. And having said that, I would not recommend this game to someone who just wants a relaxed modern action game with an instant payoff. And if you are a person who gets frustrated quickly by unclear systems or uneven pacing, then I would not play this one. So having talked about all these different elements in the game and having spent a lot of time playing it, here are my final thoughts about this one. Well, I think the easiest way to put it is like this. I'm glad this game exists, but I'm also very aware of its limits. For me, this is one of those games where the appeal is very specific. So if it clicks for you, it can be quite rewarding. But if it doesn't, the rough parts will probably wear you down faster than the good parts will pull you in. So for me, the question is less, is it a good or bad game? But more, are you the right person for it? And if you like slow older role-playing games and you enjoy the idea of building your own pirate journey, then yes, I think this one's worth a look. But if you want something that is smooth, that's modern and easy to settle into, then I don't think this is the best place to spend your money on. So that's my take on Caribbean Legend Age of Pirates. Thank you all for watching and thanks for spending your time with me. Take care and I'll see you the next time.